Absolutely. Well, I am from the UK. I just moved back here after 15 years abroad. I started recruiting a long time ago in London for working for banks. And then I moved to Dubai, where I recruited all through the Middle East. And then to Singapore, where I ran the TA technology team for Visa. And again, it was a regional role out of Singapore. And then the last 8 years or so, I've been living in California, so you can hear a bit of an American twang occasionally, and working with tech companies, startups, and large organizations as well, recruiting at all levels, from large corporations to tiny, from senior to junior, from grads to everything. So there's not a lot in recruitment that I haven't seen. And I'm, recruited in 27 countries. So it's been a ride. So there's a lot of, LinkedIn is fantastic. It really is the sort of hub of all things recruitment. And so looking on there every day, you get a very good picture of what's going on, where things are moving. And people love or hate whatever's going on. They'll tell you all about it. And there's quite a vigorous conversation always happening on LinkedIn about the newest trends and technologies. So I would definitely start from there. And then I've done some work with HR magazines like HR Tech and things like that. It's good to be on mailing lists for all of those magazines and industry groups, I guess, professional associations in the industry. I think recruitment's a very unique industry in that it's different in every company. So, generalizing about recruitment can get you into trouble because it's different wherever you go, and no two jobs are the same, no two candidates are the same, no two recruiters are the same, no processes are the same, no technologies are the same, but there are very similar tracks going through it. And so the way that it is evolving and the technology that is now available, hopefully will really help standardize and improve the way people recruit. There are only two problems in recruitment. There's either too many candidates or not enough. And that's the problem you're ultimately solving. If there's too many candidates, it's an administrative situation, logistics, scheduling interviews, reading CVs, dealing with a barrage of people who want to hear back, who want to know, who want to get a job. And then on the other side, you have, I think they call it the purple squirrel. You can't find the right people. Why not? Is it because your company's too small? Nobody's heard of it. There's no brand awareness. Is the job too specific and difficult? Does it require really complicated type of technology? Does it require, both? I often find that the job description or the hiring manager wants to have somebody who has diametrically opposed skill sets. So they could be brilliant managers, but also incredible salespeople. I think often those two things take very different personalities, or, huge amount of attention to detail while having a sort of wide visionary kind of approach. So I think being clear about what you really need and why, and what the best person for the job looks like, what hasn't worked in the past, what works well in adjacent teams. Look around, look at the team, look at kind of the goals of the job, and then be more clear about what success looks like. And then you can replicate that, and being wary of the job description from the get-go too. Like, is this gonna put people off because it's in the office from 8 till 6? Is the location, is there flexibility so that it could be potentially a job share? Could you have two people doing this? So it would attract potentially, you know, returning parents or people who need more flexibility. Could you open it globally so it could be remote, and then you can look for people all over the world who can help you? You know, being very open-minded as to what the goal of this position is really helps when you're struggling to find that. When it's the other problem and you're just dealing with loads and loads of applications, then, you know, it's about organizing and strategizing and being clear about when are we interviewing, what is the deadline, when are you blocking off 3 hours to do 6 interviews, and making sure that those are happening, and then controlling the candidate through the experience, and, you know, the whole sort of processes and administrative logistical situations. So again, those two, basically boiling down from those two scenarios where you've got no one, you can't find anyone, and you got too many people. How are we going to deal with that? Well, it's an operational risk, isn't it? It's a reputational risk. It's a, you know, I always think of candidates as being future clients or future CEOs, future leaders. They're human beings. You need to treat them with the respect that they deserve from the get-go. At the same time, if you're hasty and you solve the problem too quickly and knee-jerk hire somebody, often without due course and due diligence, and without taking intelligent steps towards actually hiring the right person for the job, not necessarily the best person, the top 5%, that is, I think, misleading, because A, they'll be expensive, B, they have other opportunities, so they're going to be picky, they're going to be difficult. Like, you can get prima donnas, and if you get some, like, I'm always one to go for people who really, really want the job, and I think then they'll turn up and they'll be grateful, and they'll be consistent, they'll be committed, they'll be excited by the opportunity, and therefore they're probably more likely to stay, they're probably more likely to go above and beyond, they're more likely to be collaborative team members rather than slightly more independent lone wolves, which you need as well. I mean, you need everybody, and there's always a place for everybody, but I do think being cautious throughout the process, again, coming back to what are the goals of this job, what does this person bring to the table, what is this job, what are the 3 major things that this job is going to do, everything else is what are the 3 key things that this job needs to do, focus on that, and then make sure that the person who's interviewing is really clear about those 3 goals. And it starts with the job description, it starts with the interview with the recruiter, it starts with really clarifying what those 3 goals are, so that everybody's on the same page, and you go forward and you start the day. And the amount of candidates I speak to who are like, oh yeah, it didn't work out, we just had mismatched expectations on what this role was, you know, the role was sold to me like this, and actually in reality it was like that. And I'm like, well, if you would just clarified from the get-go what the expectations are, what the problems are, be honest. You know, a job is a problem-solving exercise. You know, you don't come in and everything's shiny and la la la. Even at the biggest, best companies, there's messy situations that need to be sorted out. And if that person isn't scared by the challenge, isn't scared by the mess, and sees that as an opportunity of like, yay, I can do these 3 things, I can make that, and you know that's success. That's what success looks like, is solving those 3 things. The hiring manager's happy, the candidate's happy, the process is clear, and the goals are attainable rather than kind of wishy-washy and a bit unclear. It's a tricky one, because if you're alive, you're biased. And unless your brain is dead, you are consciously leaning towards what's familiar because it's safe, and your brain is built to protect you from unfamiliar things. It just saves you from the saber-toothed tiger back in the caveman days. Like, it's a very basic thing, and your amygdala is programmed to assign value to things like money, like how much is an apple worth in a supermarket, and at the same time, like, what is this person safe or dangerous? And you're assigning value in a way that's judgmental. and that is biased. And your upbringing, your environment, your training, your everything that you've taken on every day of your life since you were born is informing this behavior. So, and it's, again, the bottom line is familiarity. What is familiar to you is safe to you. So being really aware of that. And I moved to Italy when I was about 21, and I was in the middle of nowhere in Italy, and I spoke the worst Italian. I thought I was, but no, my Italian was dreadful. And so the minute I heard someone talking, and it wasn't a touristy place, so I didn't hear English very much. So I'd hear someone speaking English, and I would, gravitate towards them and start talking to them, just because it's familiar and it's safe and it's recognizable, and I understood it. And in the same way, when you meet a candidate who went to, say, the same university as you did, or studied something similar, or worked for the same company, there's a connection there. There's like, familiar, safe. And it's very basic. And that informs all the different biases that we have. And it's, again, if you can step back from that and go, okay, are men recruiting men? Are women recruiting women? Is there too much familiarity here? Do we have enough of a vibrant, diverse spectrum of opinions and ideas and backgrounds and languages? And, it's just so important, so that they come from different perspectives and they have different biases, and we can all talk about it, and it all becomes this wonderful mix. So yeah, I think it's not an exact science. It's not a perfect solution. There will never be, because we are human beings and we are all different and we are all flawed. But if we can standardize the processes and procedures in which someone can go down, so it's fair, and you have fairness, and you have clarity, because you've clearly stated on the job description that you need to have, certain things are hard skills, but once you've got clear goals, for example, with technology, it's a non-negotiable. If you need to speak a certain coding language, there's no getting around that. But with a lot of what people say is urgently important, there may be flexibility there. But I think with everything, self-awareness, knowledge, training, communication, clarity, goals, clearness, just makes the murkiness less of a problem. Good old LinkedIn. I remember the days before LinkedIn, and when LinkedIn came along, we're like, what? Someone's put their CVs online. It's right there. I can see what they want, what they work. Oh my goodness, this is amazing. Before, it was all very stealth, cloak and dagger. Where do these people work? How do you find them? So now it's all out there, which is fantastic. LinkedIn has its issues, but it's pretty fabulous, really. There's not a lot more you need. I think, again, I'm very spoiled because I work in very corporate environments, whereas I think if you're looking for nurses, doctors, teachers, people in industry, then LinkedIn isn't possibly the best avenue. In which case, again, the job boards that are for your industry, professional associations, again, are fantastic opportunities to meet and network and become part of the community that is your industry. And I think seeing it as a group of individuals with similar interests, as opposed to a hunting ground, you're less of a shark in the waters, you're more of a friendly whale who can just make friends with everybody and get to know what's going on. And it's also, you find people, but you also find out about things going on and conferences and events, and it all becomes, you then really understand your industry. And I think if I was 21 again and I could go back and plot out my career a little bit more coherently, I would start by joining those groups really early. And because you get access to really senior people who have been there for 20, 30 years, who know so much about the task at hand, the industry, how it's changed, how technology has influenced it, who does what, where, in which company, in which country, and you become part of a global group and you just learn and by osmosis from all these things. And then you find the person whose job you want. And I think that would be the number one piece of advice I would give to a young recruiter is, or anybody starting out in their career. It's like, whose job do you want and why? How did they get there? What is the route? And then, slowly start and be patient. I think recruiters come into this job because they like people, and often nobody really grows up wanting to be a recruiter, I don't think. So it's often something we fall into. I know I asked my friend, I needed a job, and he was like, well, I'm a recruiter. We just recruit quant analysts, so no, you can't have one of my jobs, but you can be a recruiter. And that's how I got into it. So often it's scrappy and it's messy and the career path isn't clear. So I think being aware of the industry and going like, okay, here are some really interesting jobs. This is kind of cool. I like the HR bit more, or I like the mobility side of it, or I want to work for a small startup and then really own the whole process, or I want to be in a large company where I can just sort of, be much more clear and strategic about how I do the recruitment. Whatever it is that you like about different elements, and there's again horses for courses, but talk to people and don't ask for work. Ask for their 5 minutes and 20 minutes and a coffee to pick their brain on their career. Let people like to talk about themselves. So ask them for their story rather than something for me, right? Ask about them and you'll learn and you'll see and you'll go, I like that, but I don't like that, but and then you'll work out, okay, I think that's the path. And it makes life a lot more easy when you know where you want to go. If they talk about the job title straight away, if they talk about money straight away, I'm like, and they don't talk about, if they talk about what's in it for me, as opposed to what can I bring to you? How can I help you? How can I help the company grow? How can I do well at this job? What does success look like? Why do you like working there? Pushing it away from themselves instead of taking it all back to them. I think, again, it's not something you get taught at school, how to interview, how to put your CV together. And it's such an important process and people don't know. And I think, but it takes, it's just that instinct of let's put someone else first. I'm applying for a job, therefore, the power, unfortunately, is with the job, right? And the company that is hiring you is going to pay you to do it. So as much as I like everyone to be, even and playing for, the power is ultimately in the hands of the person hiring. And the candidate needs to be aware of that and not be terrified by it or intimidated by it. And I think a lot of companies can be terrifying and intimidating during interviews. And I really try and make it as a pleasant as an experience for everybody, because I'm terrified. I hate being interviewed. I'm just the worst. I get all dribbly and it's just like, wah. So, I'm really empathetic to the candidate journey, and I understand that it's quite a scary process for them. And so being sympathetic to that, but also being aware of okay, is this person giving me their best self, or is this person just in it for themselves? And what is their motivations? That's kind of the key thing I look for, is what's motivating this candidate? Is it money? Is it job title? Is it kudos? Is it working for a brand? When I work for Visa, everybody wants to work for the brand. And I'd ask them, why do you want to work for Visa? The brand. And I'd be like, what? What does that mean? And they wouldn't have an answer. It's have an answer. Do your research. Find out, do a Google alert on the business. Work out what happened in the last year to the business. Who works there? Why did they join? What are they doing? For example, with Visa, there was a wonderful example of how cashless payments make, for example, taxi drivers safer, because there's no cash in the car, and so they're less likely to be burgled and things like that. It's little nuggets of knowledge that make your knowledge of the business valuable to the business, because You then become an advocate for that business outside of the day-to-day, and you become an advocate for the business in your job. And as a recruiter, our job is to be the open door to the business with the front of the shop window. We need to project knowledge and love for the brand in order to entice more people into the shop and ultimately to work at the shop. But it is very much the first line of contact, and if that is not appropriate for one reason or another, it doesn't, and then Glassdoor will come and bite you, because people talk now. So be careful.